My wife and I have been trying to get pregnant for almost a year now without any success. My wife's doctor recommended that we try one more thing before moving on to in vitro fertilization. I tucked her into bed and kissed her forehead before leaving for the couch to wait for her to fall asleep. Within an hour, her breathing became slow and steady. I walked back to the bedroom to check on her just after 2 a.m. Her eyes were closed and her face was peaceful. They also dusted for fingerprints and looked everywhere. They couldn't find any signs of a struggle or forced entry. I missed her so much. I missed her laugh, her smile, her touch. It was filled with her thoughts, dreams, and fears. I opened it to a random page and read the following. I'm so tired of being childless. I want a baby more than anything in the world. If only there was a way to make it happen faster. They interviewed everyone who had been in contact with my wife, but no one had any useful information. I flipped through them, each picture bringing back a flood of memories. Then I came across a photo that stopped me in my tracks. It was a picture of my wife and her doctor, but something was off. My wife looked happy, but the doctor's expression was unsettling. A woman who looked exactly like my wife was on TV. It turned out that she had been using her position as a doctor to scam patients. She had prescribed unnecessary medications and treatments and billed the government for them. When the authorities investigated, they discovered her elaborate scheme and brought her to justice. She was being led out of a courthouse in handcuffs. Beside her, looking defeated, was the doctor. I couldn't believe my eyes. It was her. When I arrived, I drove to the address listed on the Facebook page. Finally, she spoke. "You found me." And I learned that she had been living in this cabin for the past 8 years. The ordeal had been terrifying, but we were grateful to have each other back. Now we cherish every moment we have, knowing that it could be taken away from us at any time. She had taken the blue pill and never woken up. She had no memory of the past 8 years. And when she realized that she didn't recognize me, she was scared. But then I showed her a picture of us from before she disappeared. And when she saw it, her eyes lit up. "You're my husband," she whispered. Tears streamed down my face as I embraced her. I couldn't believe that she was really here. She was alive. It was a small cabin nestled in the trees, just like in the picture. I knocked on the door and waited, my heart pounding in my chest. When the door opened, I couldn't believe my eyes. It was her, my wife. She looked healthier and happier than I had ever seen her. He had a strange smile on his face and his eyes seemed to hold a dark secret. I looked closely at the photo, noticing something I hadn't seen before. The doctor was wearing a wedding ring, a blue wedding ring. I looked through public records, checked hospitals and clinics, and even traveled to other states, but she was nowhere to be found. I was about to give up hope when I saw a Facebook post that made me sit up straight. It was a picture of a woman who looked exactly like my wife. She was standing in front of a beautiful cabin in the woods, and below the picture was her real name. The authorities also discovered that the doctor had been performing illegal experiments on his patients, testing new drugs and medical devices on them without their consent. I rushed to the courthouse to confront her, but she was gone. But when the police finally caught up with her, she had changed her name and was living under a false identity. She had taken on a new persona, one that had no connection to her past, and I was determined to find her. I asked the police where she was being held, but they didn't know. It was then that I realized that my wife had disappeared again, but this time, it was different. She wasn't missing. She had been found. Many of the patients suffered serious side effects, but the doctor didn't care. He was only interested in making money, the same shade of blue as the pill he had given my wife. The case went cold, and I was left with more questions than answers. What did these pills do? Why had my wife taken them? And most importantly, where was she now? My wife had taken the blue pill 3 weeks ago, and it had been the longest 3 weeks of my life. I hired a private investigator and scoured the internet for any information I could find on the doctor, but he had scrubbed his online presence clean. There was nothing. I had put my entire life on hold to search for my wife, but as time passed, I started to lose hope. Maybe she was gone forever. Maybe I would never see her again. I couldn't help but feel a sense of dread. I realized that I had been a fool to trust this man. There was no sign of the doctor or any indication of where he might have gone. I was devastated. I felt like I had lost my wife all over again, but I refused to give up. I was determined to find out what had happened to her. He had betrayed my wife and me, and I was determined to get answers. I called the police and told them what I had found. They went to the doctor's house, but he wasn't there. In fact, no one had seen him for months. All I had to remember her by were the clothes she left behind. Every time I put on her favorite perfume, I hoped that she would walk through the front door. But it was just wishful thinking. They even checked the security footage at our neighbors' houses, but it was of no help. No one had seen anything suspicious. The police were stumped and so was I. I couldn't understand why my wife would leave the house in the middle of the night without telling me where she was going. The pill had been traced back to the clinic where my wife had gotten the prescription filled. The doctor had given us a sample of the same pill, which made it easier for the police to identify. According to the lab results, the pill contained traces of a substance that was used as a sedative in the early 1900s. It was legal, but very dangerous and had been banned due to its side effects. How could something like this have happened? Relief washed over me because this was exactly how the doctor had described it. He told me not to worry if she slept through our alarm clock at 7 a.m., but I wouldn't let her miss her appointment. So I decided to stay in the living room all night. My wife was to take a pill that would make her fall into a deep sleep for 8 hours. On the other side of the bed, hidden under a pillow, was another pill bottle. It was filled with white pills. I recognized them instantly. These were the ones that my wife had taken every night since she started her fertility treatment. She had taken them for years and I had no idea why. After she woke up, the implantation process would begin, but things didn't go as planned. It was past midnight when my wife took the blue pill. The sun was just beginning to rise when I heard my wife's alarm clock blare from inside the bedroom. I got up and walked toward the bed, only to find that it was still completely empty. Startled, I ran to the bathroom. The sliding glass door was wide open, revealing a view of the lush green lawn outside. Had my wife gone out in the middle of the night? It wasn't like her to go anywhere without telling me first. And the fact that the door was open worried me because I knew she wouldn't do that intentionally. I rushed back to the bedroom, but there was no sign of her anywhere. Panic started to set in. Where could she be? What if something terrible had happened to her? I immediately called the police and reported my wife missing. As they began their investigation, I went back to the bedroom to look for clues. On the bedside table, I found a half-empty glass of water next to the blue pill bottle. My wife never drank water when she took medicine. This meant that she had woken up at some point and left the house. Was everything all right? Or had something terrible happened to her? When the police arrived, they questioned me about my wife's behavior. Every day that passed without finding my wife felt like a year. One day, as I was going through my wife's belongings, I found a diary. As soon as the police received word from the lab about the blue pill, they returned to our house. I went back to the bedroom to look for answers. As the days turned into weeks, the police continued to investigate. One day, I was cleaning out my wife's closet when I found a small box in the back. Inside the box was a collection of old photographs. At that moment, everything changed. It was as if a dark cloud had descended upon me, suffocating me with dread. The police searched the house, but it was empty. Months turned into years, and the search for my wife grew more desperate. Then, just when I was about to give up, I saw a news report that gave me a glimmer of hope. The news report said that the woman had been arrested for stealing government funds. But there was more. I was shocked. The doctor was a monster, and my wife, well, she had been his biggest victim. The news report had mentioned that the woman had resisted arrest. I spent every waking hour searching for my wife. I didn't hesitate. I booked a flight and headed to the town where the picture had been posted. I couldn't speak. I just stood there staring at her. We spent the next few days talking and catching up. We returned home, hand in hand, ready to start our lives together again.